AI just might be taking over the process. So, what's left for the humans? When scale, speed, and cost efficiency are handled by the machines, what becomes of creative operations? Is a job still just about workflow and delivery? Or is it time to redefine the role entirely? My guest today is Nicky Russell, and she says the answer is clear. The job is culture now. Nikki is a former chief operating officer at Anomaly and now managing partner at WDC, a leading consultancy helping to shape the future of in house agencies. In this conversation, we explore what it means to move beyond process, to become the steward of creative ambition, emotional intelligence, and what Nikki calls clutch control. That's the ability to know when to apply friction, when to apply tech, and how to keep creative and commercial goals in balance and fueling each other. We dig into the shift from service to strategy, from supporting the work to influencing the work, from optimizing the system to nurturing the culture that fuels it. What KPIs actually matter now? How do you protect creativity when everything around you is being automated? And how do you make the case to leadership that creative ops isn't an overhead, it's the engine? If you're in creative operations, marketing, or any role trying to navigate the human side of AI, this episode offers both clarity and a challenge. AI can scale what you've already done, but only humans can create what comes next. The job is culture now. Let's get into it. All right, Nicky Russell, welcome to the Creative Ops Podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's this has been a long time coming. You and I have both been in the creative ops world for years. We've known of each other, but we actually only spoke for the first time, I think, a month or two ago.
I know, it's crazy, really, actually, when you think about how long we have both been in the industry and have known of each other. Actually, it wasn't that long ago, was it? But we did
No,
immediately hit it off.
we did.
Yeah,
We did. We nerded out about creative operations,
yes.
and you were going to be hosting the Henry Stewart Creative Operations Conference here in London later this week. This episode will come out after that. So let's change things up a bit. What are you going to be talking about at that conference? Is there a theme of the conference?
There is. I mean, I'm quite lucky in the sense that they allow me to kind of set the tone for what we want to talk about for the year ahead. And I think the thing for this year is I want to kind of give a little bit of a story about a time where I've really had to entirely break a process in order to be able to get to good work. So when you're thinking about the craft of the work, actually what we're thinking about is the craft of the process. And I kind of want to inspire everybody to be able to kind of turn around and say, look, we're the experts in this environment. We know what drives good creativity. I think we as a profession are being asked more and more on how we break the process in order to hit objectives. And I kind of want to be able to tell that story a little bit to be able to give people confidence that actually I know everyone's being asked a little bit now in your environments. Look, you're going to have to work in different ways. You're going to have to start thinking about introducing technology and, really being able to stand up for your principles and what you think is right for the creative process. So I wanted to kind of just open up by sharing the work and sharing how we got to that work and how difficult it was, but how it was the right thing to do. Because I think, we need to have the confidence more and more to be able to start thinking about how we bend and flex the rules. So that's kind of what I'm opening up with this year.
That's great, and that's a good setup to what I wanted to dig in with you today is where's creative operations? Where's it going? You talked about breaking the process to deliver great creative work. Most creative operations people, when they talk about the process, even breaking the process, re engineering the process, it's in the pursuit of what it's traditionally been defined by
Yeah.
scale, speed, cost efficiency. And those things still matter. And I don't think that's ever going to go away. But we're also in this interesting time of AI is starting to unfold in terms of its impact on the creative industry, the creative process. So let's set the table a little bit. Where do you think creative operations is at as a profession today? And where do you think it's going? Because it's come from being born out of a project management mindset, a services mindset, and I'm starting to hear some, including you, I think, talk more about creative operations as strategic in terms of what it does and what its potential is.
Yeah, I've always thought that, right? And I think we suffer from a legacy perception that we are in service to creativity, right? And that's not what we're doing at all. We've always been in strategic leadership of a creative ecosystem. Of course, that is in partnership with whatever your commercial and business objectives are. And of course, that is there to be able to help service the creative ambition. But actually, how you drive that forward, how you nurture the people, processes, and the tools that are needed in order to be able to make a great creative product, that is what we are there to do. And I think if you ask where we are as an industry, I think I've got some positives and some negatives to kind of to say, because I think we have to talk about the reality that creative services, particularly in agency land, is the first thing that's getting binned out at the moment, and it's really something that causes me a lot of frustration. It's seen as a bottom line cost. I don't think people respect the craft of the process enough, and I don't think they respect the craft of how you get to good creativity enough. And they think it can just simply run by itself, and that's just not the case. So I think when you think about where we are as an industry at the minute, I think there's a lot of, I think we suffer from a perception issue. I think we've got an opportunity in the industry to be able to not redefine, but actually define what creative operations actually means. Because I think if I was to say to you, what is creative ops? Someone would say, oh, it's a project manager, it's a creative producer, it's an integrated project manager. Like, what do all these things mean? And actually, when you dig under it, they have lots of different roles and responsibilities. But I think in this age that you're saying and you're talking about in terms of where we're moving, how we're introducing technology, it's another piece that we're introducing into the ecosystem that has lots of interdependencies and lots of connecting parts, right? It's another tool. So how do we do that in a way in which is right and morally right? So I think we actually have an opportunity to be able to establish what it means. And I think if we're going to do that and we're going to set the bar on what that is, it's about strategic leadership rather than tell me what you want and I'm going to go and do it for you.
So, what do you mean by strategic leadership?
So by strategic leadership, I mean, when you think, I'm going to go and talk about, I mean, this can be, I'm talking about, if you look at a leadership team at the minute, it can be a CMO or it can be a CEO in a company. I think if you are driving a creative culture, if your product is people, right, because this is what this is, and it's an environment in where, because you're using people, you're talking about subjectivity, you're talking about vulnerability, you're talking about lots of different skill sets. Somebody has to be able to know how to drive that system and know what is required in that system to hit what your commercial and your business objectives are. And like I say, whatever your creative ambition would be, either from a brand or from a creative director or whatever that might be. Understanding how you manage that ecosystem, you have to have somebody that understands it. Because like I say, if you were going to start going, right, I'm going to go and set up a car company, and you were going to have and you're going to make cars, right? You wouldn't sit there, you'd have like some kind of engineer that's going to work out how that works. I would argue that actually when you've got lots of people into this system, that's a harder thing to manage, right? It's like clutch control. You have to kind of know what to apply and where and when in order to make everything a success. So I think that, you need to have that at the table, making decisions so that you are driving stuff in the right direction and you've got the right partners on board, you've got the right talent, and you've got the right information that is going through that system in order to be able to get a good creative output off the back of it.
So, do you find that most creative operations people are much too focused on we're going to wait for assignments and our job is just to get things done on time and as cost efficiently as possible?
I think that is where the perception has been too much.
The perception and the reality, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so, because perception is reality as well, isn't it, right? So there's a lot of setups that I've seen whereby you've got very talented individuals in there, but they need to have the opportunity, the autonomy to be able to not just support but influence. And I think moving from a position where you're supporting to influencing is a behaviour shift and a mindset shift. It's not just about the people inside it, but actually the people that sit around it. So if to really understand what creative operations is, you have to be in a position to turn around and go, right, you're now going to influence my thinking rather than just help me get my task done. So I think that they need the opportunity, I think, in order to be able to do it, and I don't think they've had the opportunity enough.
But for a creative operations leader in an organization today who's listening to this going, yes, you are giving voice to my silent dreams. I think creative operations can be so much more than just the process and the technology. They want to focus more on the people. They want to focus more on enabling that creative ambition, as you call it. But they have to be in an organization that cares about creativity, and not just simply as
Yeah.
creativity as something that gets done in a corner, but creativity writ large,
Yeah.
as it's part of the way the organization thinks and operates.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And I think this is the other thing. When people think about creative operations, they think about efficiencies. You're going to create efficiencies for me. I don't think they necessarily think enough about how much impact actually good creative operations can have on the work and how effective that work can be. So I think you're right. I think too much of the emphasis has been on you saving me time, money, speed, getting it out the door, getting it all. It's all about delivery. Everyone's been so delivery focused for a long time that actually to stop and think about crafting a narrative, crafting a proper way of working, I think that's something that has been not top of mind.
So there's a lot I want to dig into there, but first of all, creative ambition. What do you mean by creative ambition? Is that allowing the creative director, the creative team to go off and just sort of do whatever they feel like, they want to be creative today, and they're able to like just sort of stare at the blank canvas and create whatever they want? What does creative ambition mean in the context of a company, of a brand?
So that's a big question, but I don't think it's just about letting creative go off and do their thing. I think this is a big role in creative operations. Actually, it's a partnership to turn around and go, right, what is your ambition? And with the tools that we have at our disposal, and when I say tools, I mean all of the things that are in our armoury: money, people, time, resources. How can I work with you to make your ambition a reality? Because I think if you let creative ambition go unchecked, I think it was Niels Leonard that turned around and said, you can have all the best creative ideas in the world, but if you can't deliver them, they're useless. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a partnership. And I know when I was working, I was chief operating officer at Anomaly, and Ollie Beale was our chief creative officer. When he wanted to do something and he was really passionate about it, the first conversation he'd have is with me, to be able to turn around and go, right, this is what we're looking for, that this is what I'm after, how much of this is achievable. And he was looking for guidance from me to help him shape that creative thinking to ensure that it actually got delivered. So, and I think nearly every creative operations person that you meet, they're solutions orientated. They love solving problems. My ratio was always, 9 times out of 10, the answer will always be yes, because I want to make it work for you, and we will get there and we will find a way. So I think, they are creative, but they're creative in a different way. So when you think about creativity and you think about your creative talent and your creative pool, it's just another way of thinking about creativity. So that's a partnership. So that creative ambition, and I don't even like the word enable, but we are helping to realise what that creative ambition and what that creative output is.
And is it about what is possible, as you said? Also, what actually matters? What's going to have an impact on the business? It's not ambition or creative ambition for the sake of creative ambition, is it?
No, exactly. I think this is the other thing that I think is crucial when it comes to creative operations professionals, and I like to think about it as clutch control, right? So when I was agency side, my most important relationship actually wasn't with my creative director. The most important relationship I had was with the CEO. She was the first person I spoke to in the morning, like the last call in the evening, because, we had very real business objectives and commercial targets that we had to hit. And if we weren't doing that, then we couldn't allow the creativity to go and do its thing. So it's that clutch control between commercial and creativity. And, you know, you need to know how to drive that car in order to be able to get that clutch control right. So I think when you've got that and you've got that in the right position in a leadership team, it's the missing piece in terms of making things run smoothly. I always felt that I was doing a good job when my creative director could come to me and say, Nick, you know, we've got this client that's coming in, they want us to make a new product, or I want to, you know, we're going to go into branding now, we need a whole new branding design team that's coming in, which was an eye-opener for me because it was a whole way of looking at design. You know, coming in and being able to tell the founder the reason, you know, the designers aren't at the Mac, they were on a whiteboard doing stuff, you know, was an education. But again, as long as that was commercially viable and we were hitting our targets, we were allowed to be able to get on with creating the good work. And I saw myself as that connective tissue between the two things.
Do you think a lot of in-house agency leaders don't spend enough time thinking about the commercial impact? Because often the way they justify, you know, what they do, their role is scale, speed, cost efficiency, which is really rooted in process and technology. And what I've observed in the industry over the last couple of years is that a lot of in-house or creative operations roles have been eliminated. And I don't live in anybody's head, including any CMO. But I almost think their thought process is, well, we have process in place, we have our tech stack in place. Why do we need that role? Because they're not thinking about creative ambition. And I think creative ops leaders, for the most part, have not really spent enough time thinking about, like, beyond process and technology and about what is the business impact of our in-house creative agency. What is it that we are supposed to be doing for the business other than delivering creative work?
Yeah, and the problem is they've also been judged on efficiencies a lot of the time.
Right.
So when you've got a framework that's all about efficiency and you've been set up and built in order to be efficient, not effective, it's a hard shift to make. I think a lot of what we're finding with is the trend with in-house agencies. They are moving from being what we would call a traditional service provider to brands want them to be more of a strategic and creative partner. But of course, to do that, that's a big shift, not just in terms of the talent that you need in the ways of working, but it's a behaviour change from everybody else. Because, you know, you're forgetting that one day I'm gonna be in support of you, and the next day I'm going to be influencing what your thinking is. That's a big shift to be able to make. And there's a lot of communication that needs to be done there in terms of people understanding that there are two different ways of working, that there are two different ways of looking at a brief, like a fast and a slow way of looking at a brief. So you know, the step change is going to be, and the challenge is going to be for in-house operations leaders is how do you create a framework for yourself, a value framework for yourself, always tick those efficiency boxes because someone in the business is only going to care about money. But actually, how can we make sure with the efficiencies that we're making, particularly as AI starts coming in, that that's not just seen as, oh, brilliant, we've saved loads of cash. How do we reinvest that money in a way in which you are able to go along that maturity model a little bit and that you can measure yourself on how you're effective. So I think when you think about in-house agencies and you think about being that creative partner, a big part of what creative operations enables is a good culture. It's happy people, it's effective work. So I think we need to try and reframe, if we can, how we are getting judged on what success actually means. And I think you have to do it across probably 4 or 5 different things in order to keep lots of different people happy within the business.
So what would some of those KPIs be? Because everyone's like the scale and speed and cost KPIs are relatively easy because it's numbers. You can put them on a spreadsheet and you can apply formulas to them. But some of these other KPIs like impact, I know a lot more creative ops leaders are trying to tie their KPIs or the creative team's KPIs to the marketing funnel or the sales funnel, which I think is good because a business ultimately is about revenue, about the top line and the bottom line. But that's not often a direct line. Um, so you are the managing partner of WDC, right?
I am,
And it is one of the foremost consultancies working with in-house agencies, external agencies as well. What is some of the advice and guidance you're providing to creative ops leaders in terms of the way they need to start to rethink and reframe KPIs that matter?
yeah. I think, like I said, I think you need to have it across a number of different pillars. I think it's quite hard to show effectiveness on the work because a lot of people don't have the data, right? So they don't have the access to data that you think they would have. So it's quite hard to really show how the impact of the work. But I think what you can start doing is looking at the impact that the process has had on the work. So I think if you kind of think about things like put some KPIs around rounds of amends or brief first times, for example, like actual nitty gritty things where you can turn around and go, right, this brief that came out, let's score the work on what we think that was in terms of how good we think it was. What was the process like to get there? Now let's put some KPIs on this way of working so that we're going to try and get, I love the saying, I used to have it at Anomaly, second strike, get it right. If it wasn't done, if we weren't hitting the creative response right on the second time, we have to elevate that and flag that. Why? Is the brief not right? Is the creative not right? Have we got the wrong people wrapped around the problem? And I think once you then start turning around going, right, when we had a smoother approval process or we had a clearer brief, now let's measure the impact that we're going to have on that work. And I think that's how you can start proving the value of how the process can start impacting only what your opinion is on the work. Because like I said, it's quite hard to work out how effective it is from a campaign point of view unless you've got that data. Right. But I think the other thing that you can do is something that I think is, one of my favourite parts of the job is the culture that we create, the people that we create. I think being able to create an environment in where people feel like they can deliver their best work is, for me, the best part of my job. And I think if you ask most creative operations people, they feel like they have that duty of care to everyone in there as well. That's why they do what they do. So also looking at like employee measurement scores in terms of how happy they are, how, do they feel engaged with the brand, with the product, with the work. I think there's lots of different KPIs that sits around it that's a bit softer that can help start you can start showing a different kind of impact because someone in the business is going to care about that. I think when I think about a brand, you've got HR that's sorting out their KPIs, you've got finance that's sorting out their KPIs, you've got marketing that's sorting their KPIs. Everyone has different KPIs. So it's like just try and, obviously you've got to create your own framework, but do it in a way in which you are getting on the front foot of proving to the business the value that you're adding. That would be my kind of advice on that.
Who cares about those softer KPIs? I'm going to guess it's not the CFO.
No, genuinely not, no. But I think you're going back to as well that bit about culture. Right. Who cares about culture? Who cares about creative culture? I tell you when the CFO is going to care about it is that, let's be honest, a lot of this technology drive is coming from people wanting to save money. The only way you're going to be able to do technology at scale is if you feed that machine in the right way. If you don't have the right skills and information that's going to feed that in order to be able to scale, it's going to break. And it's going to be like having the most expensive bike in the garage that no one can ride because the wheel's broken. Do you know what I mean? So I think if we can start changing perceptions and educating people that might not be in the creative industry to understand that how you're going to then start creating the right environment and the right work in order to feed that, I think all of a sudden the CFOs are going to they're going to be interested about that because otherwise that's an expensive bit of kit that's not going to work.
So let's come back to that when we dig more into AI, but going back to the KPIs, the soft KPIs, like satisfaction, how engaged do you feel with the brand? Who are the executives that care about those KPIs?
I think...
and sorry to interrupt. Yeah. How do we talk to them about those KPIs? What's the right story to wrap around it in terms, why should they care about it?
God, do you know what? It's such a good question. I wish I could really give you a good answer. I think Ultimately, it involves people. I'm really hoping, and I might be really naive, that people have a duty of care to the people that are within that creative system. You know, we've gone in and taken people on a journey, and brands on a journey of how we're going to take their in-house agency and we're going to push it forward, with new skills and new skill sets, and take them to be more of a strategic partner. And I've sat in rooms when we're selling that business case in with the head of talent and the head of IT and the CMO, and I try to really look everyone in the eye and go, look, if you really want to go on this journey, you have to do it properly, right? You have to do the right thing by those people. And by the way, you know, a lot of people in the creative industry, they're neurodiverse, so they're not going to hit your psychometric tests. It's not going to work. They need a different environment in which to work. Like, if you're going to go on this journey, you have to do the right thing by the people that are in it, or do not do it. And I've had CMOs say to me in the past, you've actually scared me a little bit about talent now. And I'm like, good, good, because I want you to know that you have to be really engaged if you're going to do this, if you're going to do it properly. You know, you won't go into an agency. You know, in an agency, they care about that stuff because it impacts culture, and culture impacts the work. And I think this is what we need to try and educate these people on that might want to go on that journey to be more creative. That's fabulous. I want you to be more creative, but you have to embrace the fact that you have a duty of care to do the right thing by the people that are within that ecosystem. Otherwise, do not do it.
So you talk a lot about people.
I
You
do.
talk a lot about talent. And I'm a huge fan of that because I believe that the way forward, where all value ultimately comes from, is through people and through the culture that we create.
Yeah.
But we also live in an environment where, and it's just not an AI thing, people have been reaching for the easy technology button for the last 10, 15, 20, 50 years, really. We've just been on this journey of increasing automation, optimization, commoditization, really. So as you're talking, the thought that occurs to me is a single question to ask the CMO or the CEO. Is your brand disposable? And if your brand's disposable, then it's all about process and technology, because it's all about scale and speed and serving the algorithms, and that's it. But if your brand matters, if you care about the long-term value of your brand, and if you do think it has long-term value for the organization, that it's going to be a moat so that you could build a broad and deep relationship with your market that will be sustainable and provide compounding returns, then brand is created by people. Because it's got to be constantly, protected, nurtured, and evolved over time. And I think AI and technology is great at scaling at speed the brand and the stories and the content of yesterday, but it has no sense of tomorrow. It doesn't care about tomorrow because it doesn't need to. We care about tomorrow. We care about next. We care about, yes, we did that. We created the brand, or we did that campaign yesterday, but now we want to create next. So I'm sort of rambling here and ranting a little bit.
I love a rant, by the way.
And great. I've got a few of them. Is the question really to ask the CMO and the CEO, is your brand disposable? And if it is, then yeah, the talent, the culture, creative ambition, doesn't matter. It's all about scale and speed and cost efficiency.
Yeah, well, this is obviously really short-sighted, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's people-powered tech. And it's going to be people that drive that scalability. It's going to be human beings that do that storytelling. And I think the way in which we're going is going to be the creativity that cuts through the algorithm. And I think, again, I love that term clutch control because you can use it with anything. But I think it's exactly going to be the same with technology and with people. You have to know when to apply it as a tool that's going to expand your thinking, and it's going to expand your ability to be more efficient and for you to redirect that money elsewhere. But if it's just going to be a race to the bottom, then in terms of going save, then at some point someone's going to realise that the machine's broke. And I think hopefully with enough creative operations professionals that can turn around and help tell that story in terms of how valuable it is to be able to feed that system with the right knowledge and people, then I'm hoping that people will start listening and realising that actually it's not going to just all be about, speed and scale and same work.
So yeah, because it is a path to a. I was talking to Dan Montalbano from VCCP, who's one of the track chairs at the Henry
Yeah.
Stewart event this Friday, and we're recording this morning, right here, in fact. And I talked about how technology, and certainly with AI now, it's sort of driving creativity and marketing and brand towards a sea of sameness. And we've seen it show up in the data over the last few years where a lot of creative work has really just been output in service of the algorithms. Like, just feed the beast more, more, more. And storytelling has sort of been put into the back seat. Creativity or creative ambition has been put into the back seat. I feel like, I wonder now, I think the silver lining with AI might be in the short term. I do think a lot of organizations are going to use it for the easy button to scale at speed, because you can scale to infinite, move at the speed of light, and save a lot of money in the process. But again, AI technology is really good at scaling at speed. What we did yesterday, the ideas and the creative of yesterday, it has no sense of creating tomorrow. So I think we're going to move to creating a tsunami of commoditized crap. See, we do swear on this podcast. Is crap? I don't think crap's a swear word, though.
No. Anyway, in the UK, we say worse than that. You're fine.
Okay. So creating a tsunami of commoditized creative crap is what we've been doing and what we're increasingly likely to do. But I think, and you just said it there, we are going to need great storytelling, great creative, more than ever before, to break through that noise.
Oh, yeah.
Because audiences are just tuning out. They're not paying attention anymore. And the data is actually showing that.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've noticed it. I'll go onto LinkedIn now, and there was I say influencers, but people that I used to love hearing their points of view on. And I know they've gone on the algorithm of turning around and going, right, we're going to do an AI thing every day. And I've just stopped looking at it. I've stopped looking at it. It's not cutting through to me anymore. And I think, I always think about creative operations and marketing operations from a legacy point of view being kind of two different things. Obviously, they're much closer together now. And some people say it's one and the same thing. But I heard someone said to me the other day, it's content marketing versus marketing content. And I just thought it was a brilliant way of me visualising it, because to your point, it's going to do a function, right? It's going to do a function on that bottom end of the funnel in terms of serving up information to the people at the right time, wherever that might be, right? And that's brilliant. That's a job to be done. But in terms of that creative cut through, like we're talking about, that is going to be the real kind of valued skill set as the stuff starts moving forward, and we need to have both. When it comes to AI, there was a saying that Steve Jobs said, which is like back in the day, he was like, the computer is like a bicycle for the mind.
Yep.
And I love that, because actually, if you think about it was a bicycle for the mind, then AI is probably like a motorbike for the mind now. But, it should be there to be able to help us take away all of that stuff that, let's be honest, no creatives get their joy out of making that work anyway. And what it should be there is to expand our thinking and expand our imagination on how we start getting to more cut through work.
So it's a great jumping off point to what I want to talk about next. I agree. I think AI used properly will unleash the storytellers, because it will free creatives from doing that machine creative work.
Yeah.
I posted something on LinkedIn the other day, which I wrote. I had AI check for spelling and grammar.
Just checking, yeah.
But it was titled Machine Creatives versus Whole Human Creatives. And I wasn't just talking about AI, I was also talking about the human machine creatives, because there's a lot of quote unquote creatives who are really just sort of doing more transactional creative, as I call it. It's like, okay, we're just going to make an edit or two, or we're going to take what we previously did and we're going to go from blue to green, or we're going to swap out the images and things like that. And to me, sure, your title might be creative, but I think a more accurate title is machine creative or transactional creative. And I think that work is going to be taken over by the machines, full stop, because
Yeah,
the
agreed.
machines are better at doing that, at doing machine work than the humans are. As I was sharing with you on the Uber ride here, let machines machine so humans can human. And then I think the true creatives, the storyteller creatives, who, if they've been around 5,000 years ago, would have been the ones to gather us around the campfire to tell us stories of yesterday, today, and most importantly, stories of what tomorrow could be.
Mm.
I think they're going to thrive through this time. There will be a little bit of bumpiness on the way there, but I think on the other side of this, once people get past the pornography of, oh, we can press an AI button for scale and speed on demand, they will thrive because storytelling will matter more than ever before, and they'll be freed up from doing that machine creative work. What's going to happen to creative operations folks? Because most creative operations people, in-house agency leaders, a lot of the work's not rooted in the job of culture, of unleashing creative ambition. um, and I think there's a real opportunity here, an inflection point where if they're not using technology to, I have the saying, command AI, unleash the humans. And I think creative operations people should be thinking about, how do I command the process through technology? So basically, command the technology to take care of the process and all the minutia, all the things that take up 90 to 99% of an in-house agency leader's time or a creative ops leader's time, and focus on the culture. Like, are we at this inflection point? Because I feel like if creative operations people don't do this, their jobs, as it's currently perceived, going back to what you're talking about, perception, it's going to be AI'd and automated away.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. If I'm going to be honest, I think it's going to be my fear is that it's seen as a bottom line cost and not as important as a strategist or a creative. And my fear is that it will go, and people aren't going to, again, they're going to get rid of the person driving the car, and then when it all crashes they're going to go, hang on a minute, I don't understand why it's not working, and then they'll be a bit like technology doesn't work or whatever it might be. I think we are at a crossroads point where we have to I don't even like using the word step up, because I don't want to patronise anyone that's in that environment at the moment, because everyone that I know is in that environment wants to step up. They just don't get the opportunity half the time in order to be able to do it. Do you know what I mean? But I think being at a point where you can help influence the creative work, when to apply technology, when to apply humans, what that might look like, how do you cast what that team might look like in order to be able to get to the output, what kind of partners might you want to introduce. I mean, if you're talking about, I mean, obviously I'm talking about creative operations professionals across the spectrum, right? Because at WDC we work with production companies, agencies and brands, so we work with everyone in that integrated operations sphere. But I think, you know, if we need to be able to start getting in and being a part of the problem solving team and being seen as a creative partner in helping influence how we work, who we should be working with, what that looks like. And let's be honest, if you're working in-house, like if you're working in an agency, you're working across loads of different brands with loads of different problems and solutions coming in with loads of different outputs that you need to get to. If you're in a brand, there is constant optimization that's happening in terms of your marketing model, what your marketing output might look like. And I think if you can, again, it's taking that step to be more strategic rather than being seen to be all about delivery and efficiencies and being down the end. I think, you know, if we can reposition ourselves into that space, I think that education will start coming slowly as people start realising what the value it is, because I think they have a big impact to make. You know, I was saying to you earlier about what creative ambition is, what that partnership looks like. It's the partnership between the CMO and whoever it might be to turn around and go, what is it that you want, right? And I'm going to make sure that we make that work, but I need to be in a room in which I can have not just responsibility, but I can be a part of the decision making, and I can influence our thinking in terms of how and when we work and the people that we hire. Because I do otherwise think that we are dangerously at risk of looking like an overhead, and it's wrong.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen a lot of jobs being eliminated over the last couple of years because I think the thought process of a CMO or perhaps a CFO or an executive is, well, we have process and technology in place. And if that's the job, it's already done. Which in of itself is short-sighted because processes, I've always said, it's like should be treated like a product, and it's in
Yeah,
a constant state of change. It's got bugs. You got to ship updates to
yeah,
it like you do with the software
yeah.
product.
Like a systems engineer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so three things, two maybe three things. One is, should we just change the name of the profession from creative operations, get the operations out of the title, and call it, no, I'm the director of creative ambition or creative culture? Two, I actually think AI at this moment is the biggest gift for the creative operations profession. I think they should be embracing it to say, I'm going to automate and optimize with these AI tools and AI agents that are quickly coming online, all the operational aspects of the creative process. And it will be a living, breathing thing that will continuously self optimize. Because the job, and everyone's going to be able to do that. Brand A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. Everyone is going to be able to be optimized to the extreme because this wave of technology is unlike any technology before. So I think optimization is going to be a box that somebody checks off on, yes, I would like optimization,
Yeah.
please. Thank you. And it will get done. It's not going to be as easy as that, but it is much more attainable and achievable than it's ever been before. And it could run in the background almost on autopilot. So get rid of the operations describer in the title because I do believe the job is culture. Because when we have technology that will allow us to continuously be optimized and it just runs in the background, so we don't need to sort of get together every month and go, what's broken in the process? What do we need to fix? You've got these living agents that are doing that and maybe surfacing decisions that somebody would
Yeah.
make on Monday morning, going, yes, make these three changes. Thank you. And let everyone know how the process has changed. Is that something we should be thinking about and perhaps doing and embracing the moment and going, the job is culture, and then turning to the CMO and going, here's why the job of being like the head of creative culture matters to this organization. Here's the near term and long term business value.
I love the way I love that you're calling it culture, because culture is people, and creating a creative culture is not easy, right? I think this is the other thing that we need to get across. You can put your values down and you can put your purpose down on a piece of paper, right? It means nothing unless you're living and breathing that in the ways in which you're working, and someone has to cultivate that environment. And like I say, you are cultivating an environment where the constant friction is discipline and vulnerability, right? That is hard to do. So I think I genuinely, whatever we end up calling it, and like I say, I think we are in a really good time in our skill set where we can. It's not even about redefining it; it's about defining what it is that we do, right? And actually having it stop changing its name, just give it. Let's just understand what this skill set is, call it one thing, and respect that it's a skill set in itself. That part that you just said about constant optimization, that's really what it should be. I know that something where a lot of people fall down, and look, I've been a victim of it as well. When you create an environment that is working and you're an expensive overhead, you're like, well, it's working. Why do I need you now, right?
Right.
And it's why we're losing a lot of creative operations people internally, because they're turning around going, well, it's brilliant. Right, see you later. Right, we've just saved ourselves a six-figure sum. It's not. It's constant optimization, to your point. It's constant clutch control all the time in order for you to be able to grow, scout, and continue delivering good work. So I think you're completely right in the way that you say it, because if you do that and you do it right, the culture will come. The people, will deliver and they'll be happy. And oh my God, it shows in the work. Shall I tell you something that's quite interesting? I remember when I first worked with my partner, John, who was the old CSO at Dare. And I don't know if you know Dare, the agency, but it kind of won, digital agency of the decade back when no one knew what digital was. So his way of being able to get creativity out of any situation is is amazing. And when we first started working together, I used to say to him, right, let's look at the work. And he used to say, but Nick, we're not here to judge the work. And I said, but I'm not judging the work like you think I'm judging the work. I'm not judging it against the brief. I'm judging it because I can tell looking at the work how good or bad the process is. I can look at work on the wall and turn around and go, right, they're missing. There's no cohesion here in terms of messaging. We're missing a comms planner. Do you know what I mean? I think, again, if you're a good operations professional that understands all those different parts, you understand what makes it work. So those little tiny touches on how you optimise and how you respond to those changes, that's what's going to make you future-proof. That's what's going to future-proof your business. So why wouldn't you have it?
So you're making me think of something which I really appreciate. Optimizing for output, optimizing for impact, and optimizing for creative ambition or creative culture. And again, I say embrace the moment because we can use AI to spend less time optimizing for output.
Yeah.
It's still important, it's always happening, but the majority of a creative operations leader's time gets spent on that and really fighting fires and chasing things down. But if we properly use AI, then optimizing for output can be much more easily and effectively managed. Optimizing for impact, as we were talking about before, it's, do you have access to the data, or perhaps it's also getting data on some of the softer things, which then frees up time to optimize for the creative culture, to be able to stand back and look at the work as you did at Dare, and go, there's something that I'm noticing here, and there's a problem in the process. And it's not about optimizing the process, it's about, is there a missing piece?
Yeah.
Or are these people not working well together? It's the non-algorithmic work, it's the human work. And that's what culture is rooted in, as you've said repeatedly today, is culture is about the human work.
Yeah.
And I would encourage like creative operations leaders, because I think it's hard to go to the CMO or an executive in your agency or your brand and say, I think creative operations deserves a seat at the table. I think it's got to be a much more compelling pitch. I think it's got to be about, I want to go out and I want to embrace AI because I want to optimize the hell out of scale, speed, and cost efficiency. We will still make the final decisions, but here's how we can start to use this new generation of technology, these new superpowers that are available to us. I want to start to get closer to optimizing for impact as well on the marketing funnel, sales funnel, on the business's strategic priorities today and over the next 3-5 years, because everyone gets the same deck from the CEO at the start of the year. Here's what we want to achieve this year. Let's try and figure out how we connect more directly to those priorities. But here's why I want to start freeing up my time here and investing it here on optimizing for a creative culture, because in an age where, and something I've been talking about recently is, I think AI basically means that we're all China. And what I mean by that, the story of China's economic rise over the last 25 years has been amazing. And the model has been, we will see innovations in other parts of the world, and we will be able to copy and scale and go at speed and commoditize unlike anybody else. And that's like actually human history. Somebody innovates, which creates differentiation and the ability to create profit. But over time, others copy, and eventually that innovation gets commoditized, forcing another cycle of innovation. All AI is going to do, it's going to make it faster and faster and faster, right? Like we can now copy, oh, I want my images to be in the style of Da Vinci. I want my copywriting to be in the style of David Ogilvy. we've commoditized David Ogilvy, the greatest copywriter of the last century.
Yeah.
And that is why original, irrational creativity that only humans have, because like that Apple commercial said, we are the crazy ones. And I was talking to Dan about it this morning as well. We are the crazy ones, and we've forgotten the value of that to go
Yeah.
like, we do totally irrational things. Like, have you ever been to an American grocery store and seen all the milks they have? It's insane. It's like 30 different kinds of milk you can get. But it's because humans crave originality, they crave customization. We just do weird and wacky things, but that comes from a creative culture, either as a human species or as a company. And that's the pitch I'd be making as a creative
Yeah.
operations leader.
And also the authenticity in the work,
Yes.
right? So, I mean, I was a big, massive advocate of, and I still am, that we have a class issue in creativity in the UK still. And for me, we need to be able to bring more people with different life experiences around the work in order to be able to reflect that in the work. Because, if we're trying to connect with the cross kind of like democratic of the UK, yet we're not representing that in the people that are doing that work, then how can you make that connection? You can't. So I've always been a big advocate of turning around and saying, like, we need to go out and we need to start showing people that there's more opportunities in creative and start bringing people in. So if we're doing that on human talent, because we're trying to get the authenticity in the work, how can you expect a computer to do that? Do you know what I mean? Because we
Yep.
are messy. We are, AI is never going to know the human instinct, like what drives human behaviour, because you've gone through a life altering, period of your life that changes how you think, feel, and love. Like, they can't do that. They don't have that context. They don't have that human context. So if you want to start really connecting with people through your work, you have to have that authenticity, and you're not going to get that through computers.
Maybe a bit of a tangent here because you said like you can't get that from computers or AI. What do you make of the recent like reports that AI seems to know me and understand me, or my AI doctor is more empathetic than my human doctor?
Oh, God.
I have a point of view on this, which won't
Go
surprise
on,
you,
what
but
is your
no,
point of view?
um, I think it's absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Is
It's dangerous.
Well, it's not just dangerous. I think it's actually a mirror of like a lot of things that are wrong in our society right
Yeah, I agree.
now, and just things that will change. So when people say AI knows me better than myself, my response is, well, you haven't taken time to actually get to know yourself.
I agree.
You're so like occupied with like scrolling through whatever, social apps you're on, or like finding some, useless thing to watch on Netflix. Although adolescence I hear is good. But we occupy ourselves so much with just you know useless activities that we don't sit with ourselves quietly. We don't journal. We don't meditate. We don't get to know ourselves. So of course we think, oh, this thing knows me better than I know myself. I think it's good at like reminding you of, oh, but remember when you said this in your journal entry from 3 years ago? It seems to be like contradicting what you're thinking about now. So I think it's good as that, as maybe a reminder partner. But knowing me better than I know myself, if that's true for an individual, then they're depriving themselves of a key part of the human experience. And the doctor thing, I think saying AI there, I think there might be a little bit of truth in it, but only because of the system that doctors exist within. Doctors have also, like many of us, most of us, especially in the knowledge work field, have been turned into pre-algorithms.
Yeah.
They live in a system of trying to like minimize the inputs and maximize the outputs, which is an algorithm. And every organization eventually over time turns into an algorithmic assembly line. And every job turns into an algorithm of sit in your little box, do these things, and then pass it off to the next box because we're trying to maximize for the outputs. So I think once we start to integrate AI into our healthcare systems, I think the opportunity will be for doctors to transition into what a really good fitness trainer does. Um, so we're sitting here, it's 2025. If we were sitting here 6, 7 years ago, I would have been 50 pounds heavier on the couch. And I started working with a fitness trainer. And it's not because I couldn't walk into the gym and figure out every piece of equipment. Like, I've got some basic intelligence. I could figure out how to get on the treadmill and all the other machines. But the fitness trainer figured me out, right? Like, doing that human work. It was the culture of, like, who is this guy? How's he wired? And what's the first domino I need to knock over? And I think doctors, if they're smart, will partner with AI for doing the algorithmic work so they can focus on the human work. And again, bringing back to creative operations,
Yeah.
I think that's the opportunity, is to let the machines do the machine work so the humans, especially the creative operations leaders, can do the human work of creating that creative culture
Yeah.
where creativity in all its forms can be activated, harnessed, and come forward. Because I think it's going to matter more than ever before for companies to be innovation engines, and innovation comes from creativity.
I completely agree with everything you just said, and I think that kind of analogy that you were saying. But again, going back to what creative operations professionals can do, I think we also have a moral responsibility to show when we're applying technology and when we're having people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that whole bit that you were saying about AI knows me better than myself. Anyone who's had any therapy, you know, and I'm very therapeutic. It's holding up a mirror to yourself and looking at the ugly bits so you can do the work that's really uncomfortable in order to be able to be a better partner, a better mother, a better boss, to be a better person. Don't deprive me of that learning experience. Don't deprive me of that struggle, because
Yep.
that struggle is what has made me resilient and has made me the character I am today. And the danger is if you're going to these algorithms that are kind of like telling you what you want to hear to keep giving you the strokes all the time, and it's not going to challenge you in a way in which human beings need in order to feel like they've got purpose, we're going down a dangerous road. So taking it back to creative operations again, if you're driving that car a little bit, I think we need to be able to start helping educate businesses when to apply the technology and when to apply the people, why it's important and how we protect it.
Yeah. And it's not simply about, it's not as simple as saying we just want to protect the people. Ultimately, it's about what we want to protect is creativity.
Yeah.
Um, you and I were talking earlier in the car ride over about convenience and friction,
Oh, you love it.
where,
Yeah.
like, when the series finale of Seinfeld and Cheers was played in North America, we gathered in bars and even in stadiums, like Toronto Skydome Stadium showed the final episode of, I think, both Cheers and Seinfeld on the Jumbotron. So there's thousands of people in there. And then fast forward to the series finale of Friends, people maybe gathered in some living rooms. And today, nobody gathers to watch together.
Yeah.
Even within families, everybody just watches on their own device. Why? Because it's convenient to watch anytime, anywhere. And we've done the same thing with food and Uber Eats. And we might be, and I think we have been doing the same thing with creativity. It's been convenient creative, where we can automate it. And you're right, we need to be asking those questions. When is the right time to apply technology to automate at scale and speed and cost efficiency, instead of saying, no, we want to have the friction and the inconvenience of the humans spending time with the blank canvas
Exactly.
and coming up with that great creative idea.
Exactly. And I think, again, I'm going to keep using that analogy of driving that car. You need an expert. You need somebody who understands that delicate balance and how you protect that ecosystem on when you apply the friction and when you apply the ease, because you need both in a business. And I think you have to be able to recognise when you do that, why you do that, and obviously that's going to have a certain set of KPIs to it, but also that friction. I mean, some of the best rooms I've been in is when you've got such smart people that are kicking stuff around and there is tension in the room because it's about doing the right thing. And I think you need that in order to be able to get good creativity. What's the point of having loads of people wrapped around a problem? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, it's a different way of working. It's different skill sets sometimes, but again, it's a different behaviour that is needed when you're going to do that. Because when you want friction, you do need a bit of vulnerability. When you want speed, you just want to get on with it. But when you are introducing that place where you're going to have a bit of friction and you're going to have a bit of, I'm going to start putting myself on the line, and some of this stuff's going to be really difficult to say. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about talent and talent gap and stuff that's happening at the minute. But if you look at the demographic that's coming up now, it's quite hard for these young adults who started their career in COVID, right? And we're forgetting that COVID was 5 years ago now. So a lot of these people were sent off on furlough for the first couple of years. A lot of the senior talent that was required in order to be able to nurture that talent got rid of in order to be able to cut costs. And they're now massively entered our workforce. And what we're finding is, my experience is that actually the confidence and anxiety is in that environment is a real thing. So if we're asking people to get in a room and have some good friction around the work and to be vulnerable, that's a big thing to be able to cultivate. And if you're doing it in a room where people are going, actually, I just want this out the door, God, straight away, you're going to be bumping heads. So you have to cultivate an environment for both.
Yeah, you do. And that's why I think we should be optimizing, using technology to optimize for output, impact, and then all human for optimizing for that creative culture. And maybe one of the KPIs we should be tracking is how often did you feel creative tension and friction?
That's a good one.
Because that's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
And if somebody answers none or never in the last month or the last quarter, that's probably a counter signal to go, that's a problem.
It's a cultural problem. Yeah.
It's a cultural problem. I almost think of it as like, if a couple never has an argument or fights, that's probably a signal like, you really don't care. Like, if everything is just like constantly like smooth and stable, like running like a global auto assembly line, then okay, I guess seems boring. Doesn't seem like anyone's evolving through that. But coming back to talent, as we're sort of getting into the home stretch here, I know you've been thinking about this in terms of the next generation of creative operations talent, and I want to tie this to maybe the final question, which is a bit of an unfair question because nobody has a crystal ball. We can't see the future. Like, where's creative operations going? Like, I've actually been thinking, like, is creative operations going to be a thing, or is it going to? Does it need to evolve into something else? Like, maybe it's like creative culture. That's the job, because technology is going to take care of like the operations and optimization, and maybe I think technology also might sort of be the what might be the domino that starts to accelerate the merging of creative operations, marketing operations, sales operations, go-to-market operations, and all this. So with all that, give us a succinct, pithy response.
Oh God, I don't think I can give you a succinct response. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, is my honest opinion.
Why?
Because I think that too many companies are worried about, we've been in a bit of an economic uncertain climate since COVID now, but it doesn't look like it's going to get any better with some of the stuff that's going on globally at the moment. And unfortunately, it isn't seen as something that is as important as creative or strategic, because there's sometimes, as we've been talking about, there's not a tangible report that you can say at the end of it, which is, I've done this, look what I've done on a piece of paper. Do you know what I mean? So I think it can get dangerously seen like an overhead, and I think people are going to believe this silver bullet that technology is the answer, and I hope that people aren't going to find out the hard way when they realise again that actually someone needs to be driving this machine who knows what they're doing. And when I say machine, I mean that ecosystem, that creative operations ecosystem. Where I think it will go is that it would be, if I was a CMO in the future, it would be the one person that I'd have next to me. There's a really good report that's come out. I think it was the AR and ISBAR, and I can't remember. It was about 52% of marketeers felt that their marketing operating system wasn't working as well as it could be. That's an insane amount of people. So I would have somebody that's to my right-hand side to turn around and say, look at these partners that I've got. You could have £100 million marketing spend, and you're saying that's not working properly. Help me make it work. What does that look like? What is the connective tissue that puts all these things together and ties all that stuff together? So I actually think it's going to be, as we move forward, the most important skill that you would have in your stable. And so if I was a CMO or as a CEO, that's the first person that I'd have next to me. But you have to give them autonomy as well as responsibility, and you have to allow them to be able to influence and make decisions in the business, and you have to give them access to all of the information to help do that. And I think they would be an amazing partner in that. What I think we need to do as an industry is we need to start going out and we need to start finding, because like I say, I'm worried about this talent gap that we've got coming up. Because if people are going to start laying off, and I'm really annoyed at agencies because I'm hearing it more and more that they're laying off their project managers, I don't want those people to leave. We need them to stay in the industry because this is going to go full circle again. But what we also need to do is we need to go out and we need to find that next generation of talent. So I think I mentioned earlier, some of the most interesting people that I know in operations have come, they're either neurodiverse or they come from quite difficult backgrounds because they've been problem solving since they were young. I come from a working class background. I was a single parent at 20. I have a disability. I've had a disability since I was 11, and I'm dyslexic, right? So I have been problem solving all my life, and it makes me very good at my job. So we need to go out and we need to find those kids that at the moment, they have no idea what opportunities that they have in the creative industry. The one thing that social media has given us is it's democratised creativity, and that's good. But there is a whole career that is made out of creative operations, and we need to go and we need to educate people on what that is, and we need to attract that talent coming in, because if we can get more of a diverse workforce in creative operations, just think how they could start influence and changing what our skill set and our role is in the future. That excites me. I want to be able to set the bar on what creative operations is, but I then want those youngsters that are coming up to turn around and tell me, hang on a minute, we can do this better. And we need that different, again, talking about authenticity, that authenticity of experience, of life experience, of problem solving. Let's wrap that around this role and take it to the next step. And that, so for creative operations, for me, I am excited about it because I can see the opportunity for it. I strongly feel that it's going to be a single point of successful failure in any kind of marketing or creative ecosystem. I think we just need to educate people on what that is.
Yeah, I think we need to define what it is and make a case for it. And I think, again, I'll go back to at this moment, this AI moment, we need to embrace it as not a threat, but it's an opportunity. And if people can see past, well, AI is just going to automate a bunch of things. Yes, it's going to, but it's then going to create the time to focus on creative culture. And that's the case that needs to, I think if I were sitting in the C-suite, and I've sat in the C-suite, if I'm the CMO, I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO, I will listen to that case. I'm not going to listen to, but creative operations should have a voice at the table or a seat at the table. But I will listen to, here's how I'm going to use AI and how it's going to benefit the business for optimizing output, impact, and here's why creative culture is going to matter more than ever before.
I agree. And we have a saying with our clients as well, get a runner on the board. It's a cricket term, apparently. I'm a football girl, but apparently it's a cricket term. Get a runner on the board. And I think whatever you need to do in order to build that trust for people to listen to you, that's what you need to do. And I agree with you. I think that being on the front foot and being proactive about how you're applying AI in order to benefit the business is going to win you trust to have the bigger conversation.
Yeah, and I think walking and chewing gum at the same time, showing how you're applying AI and then showing how you're creating that creative culture at the same time. And I think about capacity planning or resource management. That work today is algorithmic. It's about saying we have all this work to do by this date for this budget. and we have these resources and this amount of budget available. And the humans today spend so much time and doing all these acrobatics around like who, what, when, how much, and things like that. AI is better at working through data and doing all that machine work than humans will ever be. And someone listening to this might go, but that's my job. And it's just like, no, it might be today, but it's going. Because if it's machine work, the machines are better at doing machine work. Let machines machine so humans can human. And what the resource manager can then spend their time on doing is deeply understanding the personalities of the people. Just like my fitness trainer understood me better than my doctor or anybody else, because my doctor was an algorithm who would see me once a year, look at my blood work, and tell me three things. I'd nod my head and go home and eat a big bag of Doritos or crisps or whatever it is. And it's that resource manager can now deeply understand all the people, their personalities, their backgrounds, like, why do they do what they do? How do they think? Why do they do that? And then they'd be able to go, sure, the algorithm is saying, like, Nish should work on this project with Nicky and Patrick, but Nish and Nicky work really well together. Patrick and Nish, maybe not so much, so we're going to put David in there instead, right? It's about understanding the human. So, and that's creative culture. How do I put the right people together for great creative work to happen? Because that's the unknown. That's the algorithm, again, can't really deeply know how individual humans are wired, because we've spent time with each other. We've seen how we are in different situations. And that resource manager can now really be part of creating that really positive and productive creative culture, because they're focused on the humans and not the algorithmic work.
Yeah, and that, I think that emotional intelligence,
Yes.
is what is going to, when you look at what are the skills that we're going to need as we're moving into this AI kind of environment, actually emotional intelligence is going to be a skill set that is going to be really valued, because how you apply that, as you say, to the people, to the work, to the process, is going to be really important. And I think, again, I kind of go back and think about the young. I want to do the right thing by everyone that's coming up in this industry, and I want to help them to get the right skills. And it does worry me slightly that from COVID, it's quite hard to pick up emotional intelligence when you're doing a lot of creative interactions over the computer. I mean, it can still be done, but it's not the same as being in that room at 2 a.m. and kind of going, right, I can watch these creative teams and I know what is the secret sauce that's needed in order to be able to get out the objective at the end. But that's how you harness that emotional intelligence. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so I think creative operations people should be taking that and going, if my CEO wants people back in the office, that's part of the pitch. We want to generate a creative culture, and that's part of being together. Because, I mean, I've got an issue with CEOs that say, go back to the office just simply, and the reason is because, and everyone goes back to the office to get on Zoom calls. But if it's about, like, no, we want people back here, and we're going to, like, on purpose design for more human-to-human interactions, more conversations, more, like, just, free-spirited creative thinking, and then we'll sort of bring it back to how can it best serve the brand and have an impact on the business.
Yeah.
That's a really good case for coming back to the office as well. And again, I think it's a way for creative operations people to go to leadership and make a case for. It's just not about project management and delivering these things at scale, at speed, and cost efficiently.
Oh, I so agree with you. I love hybrid working, in the sense that, people need time, particularly creatives and strategists, let's be honest. They need time on their own to be able to really think. There needs to be a time to think, and there's a time to be able to get together and spark off of each other and kick things around in order to be able to get our imaginations going. And I think if you get that balance right, and again, it's about knowing what is needed in creative brains to work. It's so important. I mean, I know I keep banging on about it, but I've always been a big, true believer on you have to manage the person in order to be able to get the best out of them. And I don't want to go on a tangent either, but I know when we was at Anomaly, we done a big thing about disability and neurodiversity, and I had one particular person, one of the most skilled person that I've ever worked with, was quite challenging actually. And it wasn't until I came out and said, look, I want to talk about my disability and how I get around it and what I need to do. He came to me the next day and he sort of said, look, I really suffer with autism, and I need to work in this way in order to get the best out of me. I was like, why didn't you tell me that before? But I understand why he didn't tell me that before. As soon as he told me, we made one tweak to his working conditions, and oh my God, it just changed everything. It changed the output, how happy he was, how happy everyone else was. And it's, again, those little things, that human perception and that human touch on how you manage people and how you get the best out of people in order to be able to wrap around the work. And I think someone has to be in charge of that. Someone has to do that, and it's got to be creative ops.
Yeah. For the creative process, the creative culture, yes.
And and the work.
And the work. Yeah, so the final thing I'll say is I think it was the 1992 presidential election. Bill Clinton won against George Bush, the first George Bush. And ultimately, the reason why he won, it was the economy, stupid. And what is coming through for me is the people, stupid, is what we need to keep in mind. And it's not just all about algorithms and machines.
No, absolutely not. Let's not lose touch of the fact that, creativity comes from the human experience, and it's people-powered tech. That tech will not work unless you've got the people. So, yeah.
All right. Well, Nicky Russell, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a fun conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right.